Have you ever felt trapped by debt, wondering if there's a way out that aligns with your faith? Are you curious about what ancient wisdom can teach us about modern financial challenges? What if I told you that the Bible contains powerful principles that could transform your approach to money and debt? Take a moment to reflect on these questions. Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to explore a fascinating topic: how the timeless wisdom of the Bible can guide us in our financial decisions, particularly when it comes to dealing with debt. This isn't just another financial advice video, it's a journey through scripture and practical application that could change your life. Before we dive into this topic, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Your participation helps us spread this transformative message to more people. Let's get started. Let's dive into this crucial topic that affects so many of us. Whether you're currently struggling with debt, want to avoid it in the future, or simply seek to align your finances with biblical principles, this video is for you. First, let's understand the biblical perspective on debt. The Bible doesn't mince words when it comes to the dangers of debt. Proverbs 22:7 tells us, "The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender." This powerful verse encapsulates a fundamental truth about debt. It creates a form of bondage. When we owe money, we're not truly free. Our choices become limited, our stress levels increase, and we may find ourselves serving our debt rather than serving God and others. But the Bible doesn't just warn us about debt, it provides wisdom on how to live financially responsible lives. Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." This verse encourages us to live within our means and save for the future, rather than consuming everything immediately. It's a principle of delayed gratification that's as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. Another key biblical principle is found in Romans 13:8, which states, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another." This verse suggests that while some debt may be unavoidable in certain circumstances, we should strive to pay it off as quickly as possible. It also reminds us that our primary debt should be love for one another, not financial obligations. Now you might be thinking, these principles sound great, but how do I apply them in today's world? That's an excellent question, and it's exactly what we're going to explore next. Let's start with a fundamental strategy for managing debt: creating a payment plan. This isn't just a modern financial technique, it's rooted in biblical wisdom. Proverbs 21:5 tells us, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." This verse encourages us to be thoughtful and strategic in our financial planning. To create an effective debt payment plan, start by listing all your debts. Include the creditor, the total amount owed, the interest rate, and the minimum monthly payment for each debt. This might be a painful exercise, but remember, Proverbs 24 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures." Knowledge of your financial situation, even if it's difficult to face, is the first step towards wisdom in managing it. Once you have a clear picture of your debts, prioritize them. While it's important to make at least the minimum payment on all debts to avoid penalties, you'll want to focus extra payments on one debt at a time for maximum impact. There are two common strategies for this. The avalanche method. Focus on paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first. This approach will save you the most money in interest over time. The snowball method. Focus on paying off the smallest debt first, regardless of interest rate. This method can provide quick wins and motivation, as you see entire debts disappear faster. Both methods can be effective, and the best choice depends on your personal situation and psychology. The avalanche method aligns well with the biblical principle of wise stewardship, as it minimizes the total amount paid over time. However, if you need the motivation of quick wins to stay on track, the snowball method might be more suitable. Remember Ecclesiastes 11:2 advises, "Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land." This principle of diversification can apply to debt repayment strategies as well. You might even consider a hybrid approach. As you work on your debt payment plan, it's crucial to stop accumulating new debt. This brings us to our next key strategy: budgeting and financial discipline. Proverbs 27:23 24 says, "Be sure you know the condition of your flocks, give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations." In modern terms, this advises us to keep a close eye on our finances and plan for the future. Creating a budget is about more than just tracking expenses. It's about aligning your spending with your values and goals. Start by listing all your income sources and then categorize your expenses. Include categories for necessities like housing, food, and utilities, but also for debt payments, savings, and giving. Yes, giving even when you're in debt. We'll talk more about the importance of generosity later. As you create your budget, you may find that your expenses exceed your income. This is where the hard work of financial discipline comes in. Look for areas where you can cut back. This might mean making sacrifices in the short term, but remember Matthew 6:19-20. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. This verse reminds us that our true wealth isn't in material possessions, but in our relationship with God and others. When making budget cuts, consider needs versus wants. Differentiate between essential expenses and luxuries. You might need to temporarily cut back on entertainment, dining out, or subscription services. Housing costs. This is often the largest expense. Could you downsize, get a roommate, or negotiate better terms on your rent or mortgage? Transportation. Can you use public transportation, carpool, or trade in an expensive car for a more economical model? Food. Cook at home more often, plan your meals, and use coupons or buy in bulk when it makes sense. Utilities. Look for ways to reduce energy and water usage. Remember, these sacrifices are temporary. As Dave Ramsey, a well-known Christian financial advisor, often says, "Live like no one else now, so later you can live and give like no one else." As you work on your budget, don't forget to include a category for savings, even if it's small at first. Proverbs 21:20, which we mentioned earlier, emphasizes the importance of saving. Start with an emergency fund. Aim for $1,000 initially, then work towards 6 months of living expenses. This fund will help you avoid going into debt when unexpected expenses arise. Now, let's talk about a critical aspect of biblical financial management that's often overlooked: contentment. In 1 Timothy 6:6-8, Paul writes, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that." In our consumer-driven society, contentment can be challenging. We're constantly bombarded with advertisements telling us we need more to be happy. But the Bible teaches us that true contentment comes from our relationship with God, not our possessions. When we learn to be content with what we have, it becomes easier to live within our means and avoid unnecessary debt. Practicing contentment doesn't mean never improving your financial situation. Rather, it means finding joy and gratitude in your current circumstances while working towards your goals. It's about recognizing that your worth isn't determined by your net worth. One practical way to cultivate contentment is through gratitude. Each day, take a moment to thank God for what you have: your health, your relationships, your abilities. This practice can shift your focus from what you lack to the abundance already in your life. Another powerful biblical principle for managing finances and debt is stewardship. In the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14-30, Jesus teaches about the importance of wisely managing the resources we've been given. This applies to our money, time, and abilities. Good stewardship involves recognizing that everything we have ultimately belongs to God, using our resources wisely and for good purposes, being accountable for how we manage what we've been given. When it comes to debt, good stewardship means being intentional about how we use credit. It means avoiding unnecessary debt and having a plan to repay what we owe. It also means using our financial resources in ways that honor God and help others. This brings us to an important point: giving. You might think that if you're in debt, you can't afford to give. But the Bible consistently teaches the importance of generosity, even in times of scarcity. In 2 Corinthians 8, 2, 3, Paul commends the Macedonian churches, saying, "In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability." Giving, even while in debt, does several things. It helps break the power that money and possessions can have over us. It reminds us that we can be a blessing to others, regardless of our financial situation. It keeps us focused on others, not just our own problems. It's an act of faith, trusting God to provide for our needs. Of course, this doesn't mean giving recklessly or neglecting your financial obligations. It's about finding a balance and giving within your means, even if it's a small amount. Remember the widow's mite in Luke 21, 1, 4. Jesus commended her for giving 2 small coins because she gave out of her poverty. As we discuss biblical principles for managing debt, it's important to address a common question. Is all debt sinful? The Bible doesn't explicitly forbid all forms of debt, but it does warn about its dangers. Some types of debt, like a mortgage to buy a home or student loans for education, can be tools for building a better future when used wisely. However, the Bible is clear that we should be very cautious about taking on debt. Proverbs 22:26, 27 warns, "Do not be one who shakes hands in pledge or puts up security for debts. If you lack the means to pay, your very bed will be snatched from under you." This verse cautions against guaranteeing someone else's debt, but it also illustrates the serious consequences that can come from taking on more debt than we can handle. If you're considering taking on debt, here are some biblical principles to guide your decision. Pray for wisdom. James 1:5 tells us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." Seek godly counsel. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Consider your motives. Are you taking on debt out of need or want? Is it to meet a genuine need or to satisfy a desire for something you can't afford? Have a clear plan for repayment. Remember the principle of stewardship. If you borrow, you need to have a realistic plan to pay it back. Consider the cost. Luke 14:28 says, "Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it?" This principle applies to taking on debt as well. Consider the full cost, including interest, before you commit. Now, let's talk about some practical strategies for getting out of debt. We've already discussed creating a payment plan and budgeting, but here are some additional tactics. The debt snowball. We mentioned this earlier, but it's worth elaborating on. List your debts from smallest to largest, regardless of interest rate. Pay the minimum on all debts except the smallest, and put any extra money towards that one. When it's paid off, move to the next smallest debt. This method can provide quick wins and motivation. The debt avalanche. List your debts from highest interest rate to lowest. Focus extra payments on the highest interest debt first. This method will save you the most money in interest over time. Negotiate with creditors. Many creditors are willing to lower interest rates or set up a payment plan if you reach out to them. It never hurts to ask. Consider consolidation. If you have high interest debts, consolidating them into a single lower interest loan could save you money and simplify your payments. However, be cautious. Consolidation only works if you also address the spending habits that led to the debt in the first place. Increase your income. Look for ways to earn extra money to put towards debt. This could mean taking on a part-time job, starting a side business, or selling items you no longer need. Use found money wisely. When you receive unexpected money, a tax refund, a bonus, a gift, put it towards your debt instead of spending it. Remember, getting out of debt is a journey, and it may take time. Be patient with yourself and celebrate small victories along the way. As Galatians 6:9 encourages us, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." As you work on eliminating debt, it's crucial to also focus on building healthy financial habits for the future. Here are some key principles. Live below your means. This is the foundation of financial health. Proverbs 21:20, which we mentioned earlier, praises those who save rather than consuming everything they have. Save and invest. Proverbs 13:11 says, "Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow." This speaks to the power of consistent saving and wise investing over time. Avoid the love of money. 1 Timothy 6:10 warns, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Remember that money is a tool, not an end in itself. Be generous. As we discussed earlier, giving is a key part of biblical financial management. Proverbs 11:24-25 tells us, "One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." Plan for the future. Proverbs 6:6-8 uses the example of the ant storing up food in summer as a model of wise planning. This can apply to saving for retirement, building an emergency fund, and other long-term financial goals. Seek first God's kingdom. Matthew 6:33 reminds us, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." Keep your priorities in order, focusing first on your relationship with God and others. Now, let's address some common challenges and questions people face when trying to manage debt biblically. I'm overwhelmed by my debt. Where do I start? Start by bringing your concerns to God in prayer. James 1:5 reminds us that if we lack wisdom, we should ask God. Then, take a clear-eyed look at your financial situation. List all your debts and create a budget. Remember, you don't have to do this alone. Seek help from a financial advisor or a debt counselor, preferably one who understands biblical financial principles. Is it ever okay to declare bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is a serious step and should only be considered as a last resort. While the Bible doesn't specifically address bankruptcy, it does emphasize the importance of repaying debts. Psalm 37:21 says, "The wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously." However, in some extreme situations, bankruptcy may be the only way to get a fresh start. If you're considering bankruptcy, seek both legal and spiritual counsel before making a decision. How can I avoid falling back into debt once I'm debt-free? Staying out of debt requires ongoing commitment to biblical financial principles. Continue living below your means, saving regularly, and avoiding unnecessary purchases. Build a strong emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses. Most importantly, cultivate contentment and trust in God's provision. What if my spouse and I disagree about how to handle our debt? Financial disagreements are common in marriages, but they can be overcome with patience, understanding, and a shared commitment to biblical principles. Pray together about your finances. Seek to understand each other's perspectives and work together to create a plan you both can agree on. If needed, consider seeking counsel from a pastor or Christian financial advisor. Is it wrong to use credit cards? Credit cards aren't inherently wrong, but they can be dangerous if not used wisely. If you can pay off the balance in full each month, and the card provides benefits, like cashback or travel rewards, it can be a useful tool. However, if you're carrying a balance or using credit cards to live beyond your means, it's best to avoid them. Remember Proverbs 22:7, which warns us about being enslaved to debt. How can I teach my children about biblical financial principles? Teaching children about money is an important part of parenting. Deuteronomy 6:7 instructs us to teach God's commands to our children when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Look for everyday opportunities to teach financial lessons. Involve your children in budgeting, encourage them to save and give, and model good financial habits yourself. What if I can't afford to tithe because of my debt? This is a common concern, and it's important to remember that God looks at the heart. While tithing, giving 10% of your income, is a biblical principle, it's not meant to be a burden. If you're struggling with debt, start by giving what you can, even if it's a small amount. As you work to improve your financial situation, gradually increase your giving. Remember the widow's mite, Luke 21:1-4. Jesus valued her small gift because she gave sacrificially. How do I balance saving for the future with trusting God's provision? This is about finding a balance between wise planning and faith. Proverbs encourages us to plan and save, but Matthew 6:25-34 reminds us not to worry about the future. The key is to do your part, saving and planning, while trusting God for the outcome. Save and invest wisely, but hold those plans loosely, always remaining open to God's direction. Is it okay to lend money to family or friends? The Bible cautions us about lending money, particularly about co-signing loans. Proverbs 17:18. If you choose to lend money, be prepared for the possibility that you may not be repaid. It's often better to give money as a gift if you're able, rather than creating a debtor-creditor relationship that could strain your relationship. How can I be content while I'm working to pay off debt? Contentment is a choice and a practice. Focus on gratitude for what you have rather than what you lack. Celebrate small victories in your debt payoff journey. Remember that your identity and worth come from Christ, not your financial situation. Philippians 4:11-13 provides a powerful example of contentment in all circumstances. As we near the end of our discussion, let's talk about the incredible benefits of living debt-free. When you're no longer burdened by debt, you experience financial freedom. You have more control over your money and your choices. You're not beholden to creditors or limited by debt payments. Reduced stress. Financial stress can take a toll on your mental and physical health. Eliminating debt can lead to greater peace of mind. Improved relationships. Money problems are a leading cause of marital stress. Removing debt can reduce conflicts and strengthen relationships. Increased giving capacity. When you're not paying interest to creditors, you have more resources to give to causes you care about. Greater financial security. Without debt payments, you can build a stronger emergency fund and save more for the future. Freedom to pursue God's calling. Whether it's changing careers, going into ministry, or taking time off for family, being debt-free gives you more flexibility to follow God's leading in your life. Ability to leave a legacy. Instead of leaving behind debt, you can leave a financial legacy that blesses your family and others. Remember, becoming debt-free is not just about improving your financial situation. It's about aligning your life more closely with biblical principles and freeing yourself to serve God and others more fully. As we conclude, let's recap the key biblical principles for managing debt. Recognize the dangers of debt. Proverbs 22:7. Live within your means. Proverbs 21:20. Create and stick to a budget. Proverbs 27:23-24. Develop a plan to pay off debt. Proverbs 21:5. Practice contentment. 1 Timothy 6:6-8. Be a good steward of your resources. Matthew 25:14-30. Give generously, even while in debt. 2 Corinthians 8:2-3. Seek wisdom and counsel. Proverbs 15:22. Trust in God's provision. Matthew 6:33. Remember, managing your finances. God's way is a journey. It requires patience, discipline, and faith, but the rewards, both financial and spiritual, are well worth the effort. As you leave this video, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on your own financial situation. Where do you see areas for improvement? What steps can you take today to start aligning your finances with biblical principles? If you're feeling overwhelmed by debt, remember that there is hope. With God's guidance and the application of these biblical principles, you can work towards financial freedom. Don't be afraid to seek help if you need it, whether from a financial advisor, a debt counselor, or a trusted spiritual mentor. Thank you for joining us today as we explored this important topic. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on living out your faith in practical ways. Before we end, I'd like to leave you with a verse to meditate on. Philippians 4:19 says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of His glory in Christ Jesus." As you work towards financial freedom, remember that your ultimate security comes not from your bank account, but from your relationship with God. In our next video, we'll be discussing biblical principles for financial planning for couples. Whether you're newlyweds or have been married for years, you won't want to miss these insights on how to manage money together in a way that honors God and strengthens your relationship. Until then, may God bless you and guide you in your financial journey. Remember, with God's help and wisdom, you can overcome debt and experience the freedom and peace that comes from managing your finances His way. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.